London, 1893. The air was cold, thick with fog, and the scent of coal smoke. The flickering gas lamps struggled against the gloom, their light like dying fireflies, barely illuminating the cobblestone streets. The clip-clop of horse-drawn carriages echoed and then faded, swallowed by the mist. Somewhere, distant and unseen, a single clock ticked a slow, deliberate, haunting sound that seemed to count down the city's final moments. In a forgotten corner of the city stood St. Bartholomew's clock. It was a skeletal finger pointing to a gray, uncaring sky. Abandoned for half a century, its great iron doors were rusted shut, chains wrapped around them like sleeping serpents. Locals whispered tales about the place. They said no one had set foot inside for decades. Yet sometimes, on the stroke of midnight, a faint sound would drift from within a soft, metallic worry, as if someone was winding an ancient clock. That night was different. As the city's clocks chimed 12, a dim, unnatural light began to seep through the cracks in the tower's boarded-up windows. A figure emerged from the shadows of the alley below. He was tall, clad in a long, dark coat that billowed in the windless air. Brass goggles obscured his eyes, and he clutched a heavy leather bag in a hand that trembled with a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. His name was Dr. Edward Graves. Once, he had been celebrated as London's finest clockmaker, a genius whose creations were masterpieces of precision and artistry. But his genius had veered into obsession, and now, the same society that had once praised him now called him mad. Is crime? He believed that time was not just a measurement, but a living, breathing, entity, a river that could be dammed, diverted, and even broken. Night after night, he had worked in secret, building something that defied reason, something that a sane mind would deem impossible. He wasn't building a clock to measure time, but a machine to master it. Inside the cold, cavernous belly of the clock tower, he finally opened his bag. The air grew still, heavy with anticipation. He carefully withdrew a glowing blue crystal, no larger than his fist, that pulsed with an internal light. This was the chrono heart, a relic of myth, said to have been forged by an alchemist who vanished from history centuries ago. It was the key. Tonight, Graves whispered, his voice a dry rasp in the silence. Time itself will kneel before me. With reverent hands, he placed the crystal into the heart of his monstrous machina, chaotic assembly of gears, wires, and brass pipes that snaked up toward the tower's peak. The moment the crystal made contact, the machine hummed to life. The gears, silent for so long, began to turn with a groan. The air grew thick, charged with a strange energy that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. A terrible, wonderful dance of excitement and terror played in his eyes. Suddenly, a brilliant fork of lightning split the sky outside, its flash illuminating the tower's interior for a brief, stark second. The entire structure shuddered, dust and forgotten debris raining down from the rafters. On the stone walls, strange symbols began to glow with an eerie blue light, intricate, alien marks that no one in living memory had ever seen. It begins, Graves said, a manic grin stretching his lips. He reached out and pulled a large brass lever. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. The tower's great clocks, long dormant, screamed to life, but they weren't moving forward. Their hands spun backward, faster and faster, a whirlwind of reversing moments. The entire tower trembled violently, as if the very heart of London was being forced to beat in reverse. The sound was deafening, a symphony of screeching metal and shattering reality. No, this isn't right, Graves shouted over the din, his grin faltering. This was too fast, too chaotic. He had intended to control time, not unleash a tempest. The machine roared, its hum escalating into a deafening shriek. Cracks spider-webbed across the stone floor beneath his feet. The chrono heart pulsed erratically, its light flaring like a dying, desperate star. Then came a flash, a silent, blinding wave of white light that consumed everything. And then, just as suddenly, there was absolute silence. Slowly, cautiously, Graves opened his eyes. He was still standing in the clock tower, his machine now dark and inert. but the world outside the shattered windows was gone. The familiar skyline of London, the gas lamps, the foggy street soul had vanished. In their place was an endless expanse of swirling blue fog, a void from which no sound escaped, except one. Somewhere deep within the mist, a single clock still ticked. Where am I? He whispered, his voice barely audible. His breath plumed in the cold, strange air. As he stared into the abyss, shapes began to coalesce within the fog. Silhouettes of people, dozens of Tim, then hundreds, all unmoving, like statues in a forgotten garden. He took a hesitant step closer, and a cold dread seized him. Their faces were blank, smooth, and featureless, except for the ghostly marks of clock hands, where their eyes and mouths should have been. Then, one of them turned its head toward him, a slow, unnatural movement, and from the depths of the fog, a voice drifted a distorted, echoing whisper that was terrifyingly familiar. It was his own voice. "You stole my time." Graves stumbled back, his heart pounding against his ribs. The terrible truth began to dawn on him. He wasn't in the future. He wasn't in the past. He was trapped inside the graveyard of time itself. The blue mist shimmered around him like liquid glass. The silent, faceless figures floated within it, frozen in moments stolen from history. They had no eyes, no expressions, yet he felt their collective gaze upon him, a weight of infinite judgment. "Where am I?" he whispered again, his question swallowed by the oppressive silence. "Is this the future or the past?" Then the voice returned, echoing from all directions at once, soft and chilling. "This is not time. This is where time ends." He glanced down at the pocket watch chained to his waistcoat. Its hands were spinning backward. Wheat, tick. Felt a hold, as if a single heartbeat was being drained from his body. His pulse slowed. His breath grew shallow. He was being unmade. From the swirling heart of the mist, a new figure appeared tall, thin, and disturbingly familiar. As it drifted closer, its form becoming clearer. Graves froze in pure terror. It was him. An exact double, but wrong. Its smile was too wide. Its eyes held a cold, ancient knowledge. Who are you?" Graves shouted, his voice cracking. The figure's smile widened. "I am you," it replied, its voice distorted, like the sound of cracked glass. "The moment you broke time, the moment you shattered the river, I was born from the wreckage." "No, that's impossible," Graves cried, backing away. "Possible," the other Graves hissed. "You thought you could own time. You were a fool. But time owns you." Around them, the ticking grew louder, more insistent. Tick, tick, tick. It was no longer just a sound in the air. It was a rhythm pounding inside his skull, a hammer against his sanity. The doppelganger gestured to the frozen figure suspended in the mist. "These are the echoes of what you broke, the moments you stole, and you, Doctor, are the newest addition to the collection. I can fix this," Graves pleaded, desperation clawing at his throat. "I can reverse it." "Reverse what?" the other sneered. "There is nothing left to reverse. You are a paradox, an anchor dropped in a river that no longer flows. You are here, and you are nowhere. Forever." The ticking in his head grew unbearable. His vision blurred, the blue fog swirling into a vortex. The silent, faceless figures seemed to press in on him, their clock-hand faces turning. He saw his life flashing before him, not forward, but backward. His triumph in the tower, his obsessive years of work, his childhood, all peeling away, layer by layer, tick by agonizing tick. He was dissolving. His memories, his identity, his very existence were being unwound by the clock he had sought to command. He was no longer Dr. Edward Graves, the clockmaker. He was just another silent, faceless shadow, lost in the endless blue fog, where time goes to die. And in the graveyard of broken moments, a single clock ticked on, Forever. Dr. Edward Graves stood amidst the desolate ruins of London, a city he once called home, now a monument to his arrogance. A thick, chilling fog curled around the shattered remains of the great clock, a skeletal finger pointing accusingly at a sky devoid of stars. The air was thick, not just with mist, but with a maddening, incessant sound, the symphony of countless ticking clocks. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It was a rhythm that echoed the frantic beat of his own guilt-ridden heart. He took a hesitant step forward, his heavy boots crunching on rubble and forgotten memories. The very ground trembled beneath him, as if the earth itself was groaning in agony. Ahead, nestled beneath the broken base of the clock tower, was a single, rusted door. It looked ancient, as though it had been there for centuries, waiting. Engraved upon its corroded surface were words that seared into his soul. Time belongs to no one. His mind reeled, a maelstrom of regret. He remembered the thrill of the experiment, the hum of the chrono engine, the intoxicating belief that he, Dr. Edward Graves, could bend the river of time to his will. He had wanted to correct a past mistake, to erase a single moment of tragedy from his life. But in his hubris, he had broken something far more fundamental. The memory was a fresh, bleeding wound, a sudden, blinding explosion of light that tore the sky asunder. He saw it from his lab window in the iconic clock tower, his focal point, engulfed in ethereal, temporal flames. And from within that inferno, heard them, hundreds of tormented voices, all his own, screaming in a chorus of despair. Stop it. Stop the clock. The sight had brought him to his knees, his body racked with a horrifying realization. Black tears, stained with temporal energy, had streamed down his cheeks as he whispered the question that would haunt him for eternity. What have I done? From the heavens above, a voice had descended, not with a roar, but with a whisper that was colder than any winter wind. You played with time. Now time will play with you. And then it appeared, the chrono heart, the core of his machine, the very artifact he had used to fracture reality. It floated before him, pulsing with an otherworldly light, glowing like a living, breathing soul. His hand, trembling, had reached out for it, driven by a desperate, instinctual need to undo his creation. The moment his fingers grazed its surface, the world stopped. Everything froze in a single, silent tableau. The swirling fog ceased its dance. The cacophony of ticking clocks died into an unnerving silence. The world held its breath. But in that absolute stillness, one sound broke through, pure and clear, a child's laughter. Graves had turned, his heart lurching in his chest. There, standing just a few feet away, was a small girl. Her form was slightly translucent, and her hair waved gently, defying the frozen air around her. She was an impossibility, a ghost in a frozen world. "Who are you?" he had asked, his voice a rough, broken thing. She had offered a smile, not of warmth, but of ancient, knowing sadness. "I am the time you tried to kill." Then she reached out, and her small ethereal hand touched his. The world didn't just unfreeze, it shattered. It was like watching a porcelain doll dropped from a great height. The sky cracked into a million pieces. The gears of the great clock burst from the tower in a shower of metallic shrapnel. The entire structure crumbled into dust, and then, as quickly as it had been destroyed, London returned. But it was a hollow, empty shell. A ghost city. The streets were perfectly preserved, the gas lamps still burning with an eerie, perpetual glow. But there was no one. No carriages, no pedestrians, no life. Just an oppressive, profound silence, broken only by a single, mocking whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Tick, tuck, tick, tock. And now, here he was, standing before the door that promised no entry, only a final, damning judgment. his creation, his prison. The ticking wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a countdown. He didn't know to what, but he knew he was the only one left to hear it. He was a solitary inhabitant of a city frozen in its final moment, a living relic in a museum of his own making. Tacking a deep, shuddering breath, he pushed the rusted door. It groaned open, revealing not a room, but a swirling vortex of clocks and gears, a chaotic portal into the heart of his folly. The ticking grew louder, more demanding, pulling him in. Dr. Edward Graves stepped through, not in hope of redemption, but to face the consequences. He had tried to kill time, and now he was its eternal prisoner. The door slammed shut behind him, and the lonely streets of London were finally, truly silent. The whisper was gone. The ticking had found its home. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the echoes of time. If you were captivated by the story of Dr. Graves, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tailies that question the fabric of our reality. What do you think happened to him inside that door? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, be careful what you wish for. Inside, the air grew colder, biting at the skin. Dozens of clocks lined the walls, a chaotic orchestra of ticking. Each face showed a different time, some from the past, some rooted in the present, and others, well, they were from somewhere else entirely. In the very center of the room stood a massive machine, a throne built from gears and pulsating light. The light wasn't just bright, it seemed alive, breathing softly, as if it possessed a heart of its own. Staring at this impossible creation, Graves whispered, his voice barely a sound, "Is this my creation, or my curse?" From the shadows behind him, a voice, dry as ancient parchment, replied, "Both." Graves spun around. An old man stood there, his face almost completely hidden in shadow, but his eyes glowed with a faint, unsettling light. "Who are you?" Graves demanded, his heart hammering against his ribs. "I am the clockmaker," the old man said, his tone patient, almost grandfatherly. "The one who opened the first door of time." Graves stumbled back, disbelief warring with terror. "But you died decades ago. It's in the history books." The old man smiled, a thin, knowing expression. "No one truly dies, Doctor. They simply step outside of time." Graves took a trembling step forward, his hands shaking as he gestured towards the machine. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I only wanted to understand how time works." The clockmaker's smile widened, but it held no warmth. "And now," he said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper, "you'll learn how time kills." As if on cue, all the clocks on the walls began to ring together, not a gentle chime, but a deafening, soul-shattering roar that shook the very foundations of the tower. The walls cracked open, not with dust and debris, but with pure light, pouring out like liquid fire. From within that blinding light, countless hands emerged, ethereal and ghostly, grabbing Graves by his arms, his chest, his legs. "Te vericult, impossibly strong." "No, I didn't want this," he screamed, struggling against their grip, but it was useless. The clockmaker stepped closer, his glowing eyes fixed on Graves. "You hurt time, Doctor. You broke its rules, and now time will remember you forever." The machine roared to life, its gears spinning faster and faster, a hurricane of metal and light. Graves' body began to dissolve, to melt into the blinding luminescence that now filled the room. His vision blurred, the faces of the clocks merging into one long, agonizing smear. His voice faded, his screams swallowed by the storm of time itself. And then, he became time. He was the tick and the talk, the past and the future. Silence. The deafening roar stopped. Then, a new ticking began, softer, more rhythmic, more human. Across the whole of London, every single clock, from grand public monuments to small mantelpiece heirlooms, began to move in perfect synchrony. And at the center of each clock's glass face, a faint reflection appeared, the face of Dr. Graves, his eyes wide open, a serene, knowing smile upon his lips. 100 years later, London was a city reborn. Gleaming skyscrapers of glass and steel pierced the sky, their peaks lost in the ever-present fog. Delivery drones hovered silently where ravens once flew, their navigation lights blinking like synthetic stars. It was a city of the future, a metropolis that had shed its past. Yet, in one forgotten corner, a relic remained. The ruins of Bartholomew Clock Tower still stood, a skeletal finger pointing at the sky, ivy clinging to its crumbling stones. Most people didn't remember its story, if they noticed it at all. Te Kayit It, a relic of the past, a historical footnote in a city obsessed with what comes next. But tonight, someone had returned to this forgotten place. The heavy oak door, which had been sealed for a century, creaked open, and a figure stepped out of the fog and into the shadow of the ruined tower. The old story was about to begin anew. Her name was Dr. Eliza Munro, a quantum physicist, obsessed with a single, tantalizing question. What is the true nature of time? It was an obsession that had led her here, to the derelict shell of what was once London's grandest clock tower. A monument to a forgotten genius. In her hand, she clutched an old notebook, its leather cover faded and cracked with age. Engraved on the front, barely legible in the fading light, was a name. Dr. Edward Graves. Graves was a phantom in the annals of science, a man who had vanished at the height of his career, his revolutionary theories on temporal mechanics dismissed as the ravings of a madman. But Elisa knew better. She had spent years deciphering his cryptic notes, finding a brilliant, dangerous mind that resonated with her own, and those notes had led her to this tower, to his final, secret laboratory. She pushed open the heavy oak door, which groaned in protest. A wave of cold, musty air washed over her. She clicked on a high-powered flashlight. Its beam, a solitary spear of light, cutting through decades of darkness. Dust motes, disturbed for the first time in a century, danced in the beam like tiny, forgotten stars. The air was thick with the metallic scent of rust and decay. All around her were the skeletal remains of Graves's ambition. Enormous, rusty gears, some as large as a carriage wheel, lay silent and still. Broken machines with tangles of copper wire and shattered vacuum tubes littered the floor like mechanical fossils. It was a graveyard of ingenuity. Eliza navigated the maze of debris, her boots crunching on broken glass and metal shavings. The beam of her flashlight swept across the circular room, painting fleeting pictures of the past. She imagined this place in its prime, alive with the hum of machinery and the relentless ticking of 100 clocks, all working in concert, all under the command of one man. What had he been trying to build? What terrible secret had this tower held? Then, the light caught something, a glint of metal, half buried beneath a pile of fallen stone and rubble near the tower's central column. It wasn't just a piece of scrap. It had a distinct shape, a deliberate design. Intrigued, Elisa carefully picked her way over the debris. She knelt down, the cold of the stone floor seeping through her trousers. It was a metal box, made of a strange, dark alloy she didn't recognize, and etched onto its surface a single, chilling word. Chrono heart. Her own heart began to race. This was Italiano, the device mentioned only in the most frantic, desperate passages of Graves's journal. The key to his research. The reason for his disappearance. With trembling fingers, she brushed away the thick layer of dust. The box wasn't locked. A simple latch held it shut. She hesitated for a moment, a sliver of fear piercing her scientific curiosity. Then, she took a breath and clicked it open. What lay inside defied all logic, all known laws of physics. It was a small, golden sphere, no bigger than her fist. It pulsed with a soft, internal light, a gentle, rhythmic glow that seemed to breathe. It was warm to the touch, and as she stared at it, mesmerized, she could feel a faint, low-frequency hum vibrating through the air, through the very stone beneath her. "It's still alive," she whispered, her voice barely a sound in the vast, silent chamber. And then came the ticking. It started softly, a single, distinct sound that cut through the silence. Tick. tock, tick, tock. It wasn't coming from the sphere. It was coming from everywhere at once, echoing off the high stone walls. It grew louder, more insistent. A frantic heartbeat, filling the cavernous space. Panic began to prickle at the edges of Eliza's composure. Her flashlight flickered, died, then came back on, its beam weaker now, trembling in her hand. In that faltering light, she saw it, a shadow, impossibly tall and gaunt, moving across the far wall. It wasn't her own. Someone else was in the tower. She spun around, her flashlight beam darting wildly. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice sharp with adrenaline. "Show yourself." The ticking stopped. The silence that followed was heavier, more profound than before. Then a voice answered from the darkness. It was deep, raspy from disuse, yet it held a disturbing, almost melodic familiarity. "You woke me?" The shadow detached itself from the wall and stepped forward into the weak circle of light. A man emerged. He was tall and impossibly pale, his skin like old parchment stretched over bone. He wore the tattered remnants of a 19th century lab coat, but it was his eyes that held Eliza captive. They shimmered with an unnatural light, like pools of molten glass, swirling with colors she couldn't name. They were the eyes of a man who had seen too much, who had existed for too long. Who are you?" Eliza whispered, her scientific mind struggling to process the impossible sight before her. A faint, melancholic smile touched the man's lips. He said, his voice echoing with the weight of ages. "I'm Dr. Alaric Graves." In that instant, every broken clock in the tower, every silent gear, every dead pendulum, stopped. It wasn't that they simply remained still. It felt as if the very concept of their movement had been erased from existence. The chrono heart in the box at Eliza's feet pulsed violently, its soft glow erupting into a blinding light, golden veins of energy spreading across its surface like cracks in a shattering star. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing in on her. Graves took another slow step forward, his gaze fixed on the glowing sphere, then on her. "You wish to master time, Miss Monroe?" he said, his voice dropping to a soft, seductive whisper. "You follow my path. You seek my knowledge. You believe you can control it, tame it, as I once did." He gestured around the ruined laboratory. "This is the price of that ambition." His molten eyes locked onto hers, and she saw in them not madness, but an infinite, soul-crushing weariness. "So let's see, who masters whom?" Before Eliza could even scream, the tower erupted in a silent, blinding cataclysm of white light. It wasn't a destructive explosion, but an implosion of reality itself. The stone, the metal, her own body, everything dissolved into pure, temporal energy. Her scream was lost, an unheard echo in a moment that stretched into infinity. Then, silence. The next morning, as the sun rose over a baffled London, a strange phenomenon occurred. Every clock in the city, from the grand face of Big Ben to the smallest pocket watch, began ticking again, all at the exact same moment. All perfectly, impossibly synchronized. The city ran with a newfound, flawless precision. But back at the site of the old clock tower, now just a pile of rubble and ancient stone, investigators made a curious discovery. Amidst the wreckage, lying side by side as if placed there by an unseen hand, were two devices. One was a tarnished silver pocket watch, its back engraved with the initials EG. The other was a modern, digital smartwatch, its screen frozen, bearing the initials EMN from deep beneath the rubble. A sound could be heard if one listened very, very closely. A faint, eternal whisper echoing through the cold, silent stone. Tick, tuck, tick, tuck. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next story. Let us know in the comments what you think happened to Eliza and Graves. Until next time, stay curious.